we go. Welcome in, Heart Talkers, to another episode of Heart Talk. I am your host, Laura Lawrence, and couldn't be more happy to be here today with this guest, Laurie McIntosh, all the way from Lethbridge, Alberta. Thank you for joining me today, Laurie.
I am so grateful to be here. What a beautiful way to start what is called Wellness Day in our district. So I get a day off today. And this is a beautiful way to spend Wellness Day.
Do you know what? We're both teachers. We both have spent decades, in the classroom and in the education system. And I just think wouldn't it be wonderful if every Friday was a wellness day?
Every Friday. We have an early dismissal process here, so we're actually out at 11:30 on Fridays. And I'm just saying, like, it really does help with just extending that weekend, having the time to prep, having the time to just settle your mind and, focus on other things besides just being a teacher. So we're pretty lucky over here.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, because being a teacher, it's a wild ride. And my guests here who've been following the show know that I spent 15 years in the classroom. I've had other guests on talking about teaching and education and kids these days. And so I cannot wait for this conversation. So let's introduce you to the Heart Talk community. So tell us, who is Laurie McIntosh?
Well, Laurie McIntosh, I am a full-time teacher still in the classroom. I am on Treaty 7 land in Lethbridge, Alberta. My pronouns are she and her. Who am I? Isn't that like the hardest question of all? I have a friend, Dr. Christina Fox, who was an elder on our staff, and she says what we tend to do is we tend to introduce ourselves and talk about ourselves in the what instead of the who. So, of course, my first instinct right here is to go to all of my roles and my titles. I'm a mom, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and all of those things. But I think really what a conversation like this allows us to do is to just jump right into the who. So, who am I? I'm a storyteller. I thrive on story. I thrive on connection and kindness and community. Those are integral parts to my life and are how it's not just uh, something I hope to do. It's a mindset I live by. I am an empath. I am someone who has been feeling feelings for people and even inanimate objects, the pencil that isn't used in the pencil jar for a very long time. And I'm starting to realize the beauty that being an empath is and what a gift it is. As a young girl, I was told it was a weakness, and it's so beautiful to be embracing that part of me now and realizing that it's actually a gift. I am somebody who, like I say, is a connector. I'm someone who always is looking for opportunities to connect, not only to learn and unlearn in my own life, but to hopefully pass on some of the things that I've experienced in life to other people. I believe that healing only takes place through connection. So, like you, I have a story, and like you, I've had to find creative and innovative and resourceful ways to heal, and so I do that through kindness, connection, and community. That's a little bit about who I am.
And I think that's the perfect explanation. That's what drew me to you. And I think that's why this is going to be an amazing conversation for this community because that describes many of the followers and the women who are here in the Heart Talk community, heart led empaths, really rooted in connection, community, kindness. And I love it. Every time I sit heart to heart here in this space, we do talk about navigating the hard-filled and hope-filled seasons of life. And I always believe that we cross paths with people for a reason. And when you and I hopped onto a Zoom, I don't know, I think it was about a year ago, we found that we were way more alike than we are different. And had similar pasts and having to navigate some of those really hard things as a mom and single mom and a teacher and raising babies through some of those hard days of divorce and separation. And so it's been a joy to see you flourish in what you do. I love following you on socials because you light me up. And let's talk about that. In the book that you wrote with Dr. Jody Carrington, Teachers These Days, which I highly recommend. We're going to talk a little bit about it. I really want to focus on two
Focus
things
on two
that I think that's going to be very relevant, no matter if they're teachers that are
teachers.
listening,
Totally.
moms. It's the light up. And that's what you bring to the classroom. That's what you bring to your social media space. That's what people want to be around you because you just light up around them. So let's talk about it. Now, in the book, there's one of my favorite pages. It talks about it's not the method, it's the light up. So can you share with the listeners here, what is the light up?
So, when I started collaborating with Dr. Jody, I always joke I need a t-shirt to say like number one, like first stalker of Dr. Jody Carrington. I was following her around, seeing her in church basements, at conferences. I remember going to the first conference with her, and it was like a little round table of 8, and everybody else left the room to go do God knows what at this point. And I sat at that table and took in everything she had to say. And when she introduced me to the concept of the light up, for a really long time, I got it wrong.
Mhm.
Uh, Despite being what I would say, I am the best student of Dr. Jody, as many of us claim to be. So what I thought was, when I see Dr. Jody Carrington, the way she lights up is a light up.
Mhm.
She is like full body. She crouches down. It's big, and it makes you feel so seen and so special. And I remember writing in my notes, like, hey, go home and practice that. Go home and practice the light up. And I remember like trying it with my husband and trying it with my friends and being like, ah, and they were always a little bit like, oh, okay, that's different. And I think what I started to realize is that that was like special to Jody. And the light up looks different for all of us. So, what I had to come to realize, and it took me a long time, was that not every light up looks like Dr. Jody's light up. And I actually have my own light up. And I have a husband who lights up for me in a way that he lights up for no one else. And it's not big and grand and loud.
Mhm.
It's more sacred. It's a nod. It's a look. It's him saying my name. And the light up for me is something that is so personal, and something that looks different based on the connections that we have. I always say, not just with students, but with people in my life. I have my low and slows that I know need the quieter light up, need that nod,
Mhm.
need that acknowledgement in a different way. And then I've got people in my life who I do the opened arm, like full on airport arrivals terminal light up for. So for me, the light up is all about being seen and being acknowledged, based on the connection I it's not necessarily, it doesn't look the same and sound the same for every relationship you have in your life, but it's that special moment of connection that acknowledges your presence, that makes you feel seen, and that makes the other person in your presence know that, life wouldn't be the same if you weren't in it.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how much I needed to hear that today. It actually makes me emotional to think about that because it is so true. The light up is so unique. And as you speak about your husband's light up for you, it's the same with mine. It's very quiet, it's very sacred. It's in the quiet moments. I'm big and bold and out there and he's not. He's more private, and depending on the relationships we have, and like for example, I light up with kids who maybe I don't
And
know
I
as
think what
well.
happens,
Sorry, Larry, we have some lag.
oh, sorry, it's just lagging there. I'm going to plug in at a different way too, in case it's on my end.
No, it's on my end. It's rural internet.
Okay, there we go.
I
There
was just
we
saying,
go.
often I feel like it's easier to do a big, bold light up with kids I don't know than it is with my own kids. And I beat myself up about that sometimes as a mom. Like, why can't I be more mushy? And why can't I be more huggy and lovey? And I love what you said. It makes me think about how my light up is different and it's unique to who I am and it's authentic. And that when we light up for people, it's really just about helping them to feel seen and heard and when other people light up for us, maybe it doesn't look exactly the way we would expect it to look. Wow, so powerful.
And I love the way you just said that, right? Like it's a sacredness, and that authenticity is for me what matters the most, right? If I power through a light up and think of it too much with that what in my head that we just talked about and not the who in my heart, I'm not being authentic.
Mhm.
And that is not going to allow for that connection place. I think, I've learned a lot from my mom. We lost my dad last December, and it was awful and it was tragic. And the relationship I had with him was very complicated and very messy. And my mom and I have had a lot of conversations this year around advocacy and around, that connection, authenticity, and how we show up in the world and what that looks like. And I was, lamenting to her one day that I felt like she wasn't in my corner enough.
Mhm.
And because if you were feeling this way, I would show up for you like this, and this. Like these are the things I would do. And she's like, I'm not you, Laurie.
Mm.
And my advocacy looks and sounds different, but that doesn't mean it's not as impactful, meaningful, or authentic as yours.
Wow. And
And
I
I
think,
feel about light up, right?
mhm.
Right? If it comes from that place of authenticity, if it comes from that place of like, this is how I do it, it's so much more powerful than powering through something that you know isn't you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's the missing conversation in relationships, whether it be friendships or marriage or relationships amongst colleagues, is that there's this misunderstanding or this expectation that the light up look like how we light up for other people. So,
100%.
yeah, I think is
And I speak about that when I go out speaking with groups. I talk about, I'm very honest about my therapy journey, and one of the things that my husband and I have learned through therapy is that unmet expectations are the root of all conflict,
mhm,
right? So despite any conflict you're having in your life, it's really about an unmet expectation. And when we apply that to light up, when we apply that to connection, often the unmet expectation is, well, this is how I do it for you. Why aren't you doing it for me the
mhm.
same way?
Yeah.
Right. And the conflict that can cause. So I think it's really fascinating to start to be able to recognize and notice, again, the sacredness and the real authentic connection that takes place when we allow ourselves to do it from our hearts and not from our heads.
Yeah, I talk a lot about that in as a body talk practitioner to my clients as well about what we call the mirroring effect. You know, how we can be, our best advocates, but also our worst enemies. In that when we're triggered or we're upset by something, to take a step back and take a bird's eye view and say, like, how is this me? Like, how is this my inability to see a different perspective or my expectations that are really up here? And it's hard work, the hardest work I have ever done. And I remember my psychologist saying this to me day one when I stepped in after following the separation from my ex-husband. She said, listen, if you don't work on you, because it's so easy to project on other people, oh my gosh, they did this did this. And she said, if you don't sit and work on you, you are going to find yourself in the exact same scenario, different faces again. And I thought, well, you're fired. I'm not. And here we are 13 years later. She has become such an integral part of my mental health maintenance plan. She's like a family member to me. But the old saying, the truth hurts, you know?
Yeah. And I
I
think that spot of the who in the heart will do that to us every time, right? Like I can try and trick myself all day long with my mind and with my thoughts of here and all the what's of the world. Like I say, I can place blame on others. I can
Mhm.
do all the like, yeah, but you did whatever. And I think that's why, like, you know, social media gets a lot of flack for being inauthentic, but I have really been able to find that authentic place in social
Mhm.
media. And I think that's what I love about the community there. And that's what I love about the people I surround myself with is you're challenging me to look inwards and to do that inner work.
Mhm.
And, you know, that community for me, it is a very healing place. And, my therapist and I have had the conversation. There has to be a better word than selfish, but in that place, there are very selfish reasons for me to be there. I have done so
Absolutely.
much healing with sharing a story and sharing many stories that it feels so private and just being embraced for sharing, for being authentic, for, like you say, people want to be around you. Like, I don't see myself that way. I don't think of myself that way. But when you say that, this awareness comes about and goes, yeah, that is what I've created,
Yeah.
right? And as we've been told to be humble, especially as women, um, I need to sit in that more. I need to sit in that space and honor the work that I've done. This isn't just luck. This
Hmm.
isn't just me sitting around waiting for things to happen and waiting for the healing to place. I'm doing the active work. And I think that's something I'm incredibly proud
Yeah, and so you should be. And I love that you speak to that as women, the humbleness and that, stay quiet, don't brag. Let's not be too confident. Let's not be too loud, and how difficult it is to take a compliment. I've been really working on that as well, instead of redirecting or projecting back. Hey, has that been something that you've had to really work on too?
100%. And I think I'm a deflector. And now that I notice the patterns, I'm so much better at trying to like take a breath, take a moment, just a quick little pause to be able to let those words in. Because I deflect, I go to humor, I'm loud, put it back, I project it back. You, I'm going to do all those things. Again, my mom is on my mind this morning, and I remember her saying that she used to always feel like when she was in conversation about her kids, and when people were really talking us up and really saying like, oh, you've raised such good kids, they're so kind, they're so, involved, this is so great, she always felt like she needed to like take us down a little.
Mm,
And she realized what she'd say back is, yeah, but you should see them at home, or like, oh, you get the best version or whatever. And she realized that that was her way of wanting to make sure that people didn't think she was naive. And it was her way of trying to show, like, I'm a smart, intellectual, in tune mom who knows my kids aren't perfect. She felt like the need to do that in conversations constantly in order to appear as like, don't worry, I also know they can be total assholes,
yeah.
right? And I think like that's been something we've all been taught as women as well, right? Let me dumb it down so that
Mhm.
you don't think I think too highly of myself, so that you don't think I'm egotistical, so that you don't think, all of these things. I'm going to dumb it down a little so that you can walk away feeling more comfortable in this conversation.
Absolutely. I
And I
don't
remember, no, I wrote a bio a while ago, and the advice I was given was write it as though you're a white man. And I thought,
I love
genius.
that.
I need to write this not from a perspective of a woman who's been hurt and who has been told to dumb yourself down and be humble, be humble, be humble. You write it as a white man. And it's really changed my thinking in a lot of conversations I have, not just writing a bio for myself.
Yeah, I think that your mom said it best. Like that when you talk about it, I feel that people will give me compliments about my kids and I have said that. Oh, well, you should see them at home. Or well, you should see because it's like I don't want them to think that I am this perfect mom who hasn't made mistakes in my own journey or that my children haven't. And I think my fear is always to kind of be caught as, because as an author, a teacher, a mental health advocate, the founder of a mental health organization, you're in the spotlight, and when your kids make a mistake, then it's like, oh shit, that was my fault. Like, why didn't I do better? When it's not, it's about the journey of learning. And I remember Jeanette, the psychologist I work with, says all the time, like, it's you should make mistakes. Your kids should make mistakes. It's how you bounce back from them. It's, the repair after, it's the conversations. So yeah, I love where this is going. And I love that when you write a bio, I'm gonna go look at my bio and I'm gonna redo it from the perspective of a white man. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, it was such good advice because you don't hold back, right? Like, I'm watching my daughter right now, basketball player, and I watch about how these male basketball players talk about themselves and pump themselves up and how they pump each other up. And there is so much like, there is nothing humble about it. And here she is learning, like, but you be careful. And I
Yeah.
just think, like, what are we doing? Why are we telling her to be so careful? So, and I think that's why, like, being in kindergarten, again, it's such a healing place for me. I can go back and tell these kids all of the things that I missed hearing. I'm healing my little Laurie heart in that classroom
Mm,
every day, right? To be told mistakes are important and mistakes are how our brain grow and mistakes don't make us bad people. We're having a failabration this week based on a book by Brad C. Montague, and it's a whole failabration where we're going to celebrate our fails and we're going to do art that you think would be a fail, but we're going to turn it into beauty. And I think that, the more we can have these conversations and the more we can push back on the things, especially we were told as little girls, the better off we'll all be.
mm. A failabration. I we should all do that. That should be something that we do as adults, a
Yeah.
failabration. I'm turning 45 this weekend, you see, and it's a little bit hard for me. It's like, I can't even say that I'm super excited about it, to be honest. Um, because I'm like in my mind thinking how many years I have left to make an impact in my children's life and my own legacy. But I'm gonna sit down, Lori, and I'm gonna do a failabration the day
I'm
before.
telling you, what a good way. Well, happy birthday, by the way. But really, right? To take
Mhm.
those things, and I mean, the book is beautiful. He does such a beautiful job with all of his books. But this book, I just like, I want to give it to every woman I know, right? Every birthday that comes along, every anniversary, divorce party, whatever it is, I'm like, I need to bring this book along because it's such an important lesson for all of us to learn. We should be throwing celebrations all the time. We should be talking about what we've learned through our failures and through these things we call faults. They're really actually beautiful opportunities for growth and learning, and they're gifts.
Mm. They sure are, aren't they? And to be able to teach our kids that so early on. One of the things I love most about following you is seeing all of the phenomenal children's books that you bring into your classroom. Now, I'm a children's author and I've got a couple books out there. But I have been so inspired by the authors and the messages. We've ordered many books based on what we've seen that you've done in the classroom. And so I highly recommend if you're listening to this, you go follow Lori, because a lot of times children's books aren't just for children.
I have a little stack over here that I'm looking at, right? And some books that have gotten me through grief this year. There's a book called The Tunnel that is all about a little child who wants to tunnel away after something. That would be a good one for you, Laura. You would love it. The
Mm.
tunnel, and you're gonna dig into this tunnel and you're gonna just bury yourself away and you don't want to come out of the tunnel, but somehow, some way, this little person hears the people talking about how much they miss him and he decides to come out of the tunnel. And like there, I mean, Thursday morning was one of those beautiful, mornings where I laid in bed going, all right, you want a tunnel today, but I need you to come out. And yeah, you might have dirt in your hair and leaves on your clothing as you come out, but just think of the people that are waiting outside the tunnel.
Oh, I love that. I'm
Another book
definitely
that's
going to get that
big,
book.
big is another one that, it's a beautiful book, but by Vishanti Harrison, I think. And it opens up and it's the same thing. It's about a little girl in school too big, too much, you're too much, too much. And she grows and grows and grows on the page until she gives those words back to the people that gave them to her, saying, like, no, I'm not. So I think children's books have helped me heal in so many ways too. And they make beautiful gifts and beautiful messages for people that need them most.
Hey, I don't think I sent you my last book, Lily's Heavy Heart, yet, did I? That's the one I wrote on grief.
No, I have that one. Of course, I have that one.
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
I have all your books all the time. They're always on our shelf.
I'm honored. I said to my husband, it's like a life goal as an author. Get on the bookshelf of Laurie McIntosh because uh,
Yeah.
so let's talk about one of the other things that I love from the book, and I think that I see too when you are advocating and educating in your classroom, and also helping us as a community is that conversation about when people are looking for attention, they're actually looking for connection. So the loudest, the most difficult, I think about that. My son, we're just going through an ADHD diagnosis for him, and we just did parent teacher interviews. And his teachers, God bless them, they are amazing souls. I've taught with many of them, but it's challenging when you have a child in your classroom who's neurodiverse or has other complexities. And it takes a different skill set, a different level of understanding, empathy, awareness, education. So let's talk about that. The attention seeking is connection seeking. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that quote has been picked up so many times by like Edutopia and like beautiful big organizations that quote Jody saying like that, it's really that mindset shift that we've all been told. I mean, even in school, we told like you're looking for attention, not connection. I mean, we're told that in our lives frequently. We're looking for attention. One of the most beautiful gifts I ever got was from, I was leaving the small town we were living in, and there's a lot of backlash for living out loud in that little town and promoting kindness and connection, and a lot of talk around who I was as a human being and why I would parade children around to spread kindness, how selfish. And I got this gift of this note saying, what I've always known about you, Laurie, is you're never saying, watch me go. What you're actually saying is, join me.
Mm,
And it's an invitation that makes some people feel incredibly because they're not ready to join in. And I think that about that quote often, right? We are looking at people going like, oh, they're saying like, look at me, watch me, like attention over here, please. But what you're actually saying is like,
mhm,
join me on this journey. I don't want to be alone here. Um, and I think when we're in classrooms, I mean, like I say, it's a very healing place for me to be part of kindergarten. I was the kid who was, I mean, like what, white, able-bodied, returned all my permission forms, came with a lunch every day, smelled good, like compliant. I was a teacher's dream at those times. But I
mhm.
think about what that actually did to me as a human being to just have to sit for years and years being compliant in a space, and not draw attention to myself and not, be labeled as something I didn't want to be labeled as. So that quote for me, I think it applies so much to education, but man, does it apply to the entire,
For
right?
sure.
With when people are needing something from us, what they're often needing, we want to reframe as something negative. We want to put that negative spin on it. But if we can look at the world as looking at people who are desperate for connection, like more desperate than we've ever been for
Mhm.
connection, true authentic connection, I think it just provides that mind shift not only within ourselves for what we need and what we look for, but also those around us. It really, I mean, it all intertwines so beautifully. And that's what I love about your podcast is it all, I mean, everything is just like so intertwined so beautifully. Um, it, it talks about the who in the heart again, right?
Mhm.
Right. Like I'm going to show up as a what, and I'm going to do that. But really what I want to be able to show up as is the who and be brave enough to do that and know that you'll still accept me and love me despite my mood, my mindset, my mistakes. You're going to see my worth and you're going to see my value and you'll join me.
I love that. And I think we all have to be reminded when we are in community, sharing spaces with people who have different opinions, who come from different backgrounds, who make different choices, that in the heart of who we are and the core of our being as humans is that we all need those five foundational emotional needs, which is we want to be loved, we want to feel safe, we want to be seen, we want to feel heard, and we want to be valued. And that is the truth. And I think that when you're raising tiny humans, when you're teaching humans, you and I both so passionate about kids. I mean, just like we've been working with kids for 30 years and they're the most amazing humans on the planet. And often I said, like, if 5 and 6 year olds could manage the world, we would be in a better place. And
Uh,
we often overlook the insight and the wisdom of kids. And they're raw, they're unfiltered. They are still closest to who they truly are and what that divine light and love is. But Sam, we always just kind of diminish their voices, or they're just kids, or we overpower. And so I love that when I watch you in your kindergarten class, and I have to say, a lot of my colleagues follow you and are inspired by you in the
Thank
education
you.
space. That's actually how I found you first was, one of my colleagues is like, you have to follow this, Laurie. um, is that you are empowering kids to speak up, to be kind, to find their voice that heals both themselves but others. So tell me, how has teaching 5-year-olds changed you?
I think in so many of the ways you just mentioned, right? Like it's such a pure place. We just had this conversation. I had ISP meetings yesterday. We had this conversation of Mrs. Mack is a little bit of an instigator in our class, right? Like I don't just like go with the flow and just like, okay, we'll just see. I purposefully plan meaningful conversations, hard conversations, experiences, all of these things. Um, and I'm constantly humbled by kids. I am constantly humbled by how they show up. I get them at 4 and 5 years old, where some of them have heard terrible messages,
Mm,
and it breaks my heart that they're already affected by those. I also get kids who just aren't don't know about how harsh the world can be yet.
yeah.
But I think what we're doing in kindergarten is again, I it's a healing place for myself. We're trying to say school shouldn't be about just showing up and being compliant. School should be a place that challenges us, that heals us, that holds hope for us. It should be a place where we learn those foundational skills about connection, right?
Mm,
Like how to light up, how to acknowledge, how to make people feel seen and loved and safe and valued, and all the things you just mentioned. So we take time every day to do that, and they are very planned, meaningful experiences. It starts with a morning meeting where we talk about the importance of using people's names. We talk about, one word answers and using the words like, tell me
mhm,
more. And how if you lean in and say, tell me more, how people put their shoulders back and their face changes and they want to tell you more. They feel like you care. So we're always doing those things in very meaningful ways. But also, I think very often we undervalue and underappreciate what kids can offer
mhm,
to the world, right? I have to tell you one of my favorite stories. It's a big, beautiful story, but the shortened version is we had a chef come in from the local restaurant when I used to live in central Alberta, and he read a book to us about hamburgers, and he creates these beautiful hamburgers. If you can follow him on socials, they're so good. Cilantro and chive out of home. And Riley and his beautiful wife Kim do this amazing job of building community through this restaurant. And we had been there as a class, and he came in to read a book, and he offered us the opportunity to put a burger we'd created on his menu. And as we did that, we said, here's a top bun and a bottom bun, and just fill it in, and it's gonna be so great, like filling with the most, nutty, most bananas thing you can think of. And we gave him this book, and as he left the room, one of a child who was greatly struggling in our classroom community at the time yelled out to him. He said, "You better put that on your menu!" Like really angry and rough. And I was like, "Oh gosh, great, that's wonderful. Thanks for ending our time with our guests that way." And Riley's a huge dreamer, and he's like me. He's not scared of the word no. And he called that night and said, "We're going to put a burger on the menu." And $2 of every burger sold is going to go to the charity of your children's choice. You are not picking. You need to learn about charity. I want you to pick one. And we ended up picking the local food bank based on a story a child in our class had told us about her aunt who desperately needed the money because her aunt gave her food every Sunday after church in a box. And we learned it wasn't her aunt, it was Miss Millie who ran the food bank. And that month changed my life in so many ways. Again, I wasn't concerned about people thinking it was like, oh, watch Laurie go. Laurie thinks she's the
mm.
best teacher. Listen, there are incredible teachers everywhere. I'm just sharing what I do. That's the only difference between me and them. And that was 7 years ago. And, you can watch Riley tell the story over and over, but that day was pivotal for him because he started the burger of the month in his restaurant. And there's been chefs now for 7 years. Laura, they've raised $170,000 for local charities,
Oh my
all
gosh.
from bringing in a guest reader and a little kid with the gusto to say, you better put that on your menu.
Wow.
Like we underestimate the power, and I have so many stories like that. Again, Dr. Fox, who's such an impact on my life, when we do our land acknowledgement every day, you do such beautiful reflection. Can you ask them today what they're going to do with that land acknowledgement? And I was like, they're 4 and 5, Dr. Fox, like, calm down. What do you mean? What are they going to say? And we did our land acknowledgement. I said, okay, with very little hope in my heart, said, okay, what are you going to do with that today? Just to see what they said. One girl said, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to say Oki, which is hello in Blackfoot. And if somebody says, I don't know what that means, she said, I'm going to say that's from the Blackfoot people who it means hello, you know? And we had one brave little boy who said, my dad doesn't believe that land acknowledgements are important. My daddy doesn't believe in the Blackfoot people in our city. So I'm going to go teach. Like these are huge life-changing statements
Mhm.
that these kids are making. And if we give them voice and choice, if we don't stifle them like we were as children, is let's be factory workers in a compliant four walls of this classroom, and that's how you will be successful. When we allow them to flourish and when we allow teachers to flourish, like the world is changing. We just need the opportunity to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I always believe and have ever since I've been in this space is that the right way forward really is raising kind, empathetic humans, little tiny humans, because they are the answer. And often in healthcare and other areas, we're looking at the end of how we're going to solve problems instead of the prevention. If we took more of an educational, you know, perspective of early intervention with literacy and math and the things what we do with mental health, which is what I'm trying to do with our nonprofit, is like, let's have these conversations big and bold early, and let's give these kids the tools and the skills to be able to pull themselves out of the river or at least get a foot up instead of waiting for somebody to reach down and pull them out.
100%. Like, this is why I do what I do, right? Despite how hard it is right now and despite how exhausted I am, that sums up my why. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to be able to do. And we have the power to do that. We
Mm.
do have the power. Unfortunately, we're not often given the resources and the supports that we so much deserve, and so these children so much deserve. But I try really hard to take what I can control within our classroom, and I truly believe that what I can control is the messages that we are practicing and the experiences we're doing, and that real life stuff that shows you, like, hey, you don't have to wait until you're an adult to make an impact. Like, you get to make an impact right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to our fellow teachers out there who are tired and exhausted and who've put in 20, 30 years and still doing it because they are superheroes. In my first book, Lily's Loudmouth, she could become anything in the world to change the world, and she becomes a teacher. And every time I do an author reading and I read that to students, they get it, and they know that the teachers who've showed up for them in their world, who've changed their lives, have really changed their lives. And we know as teachers, you change one life, you change many, and we bank on the ripple effect. What we can do with limited resources, how we can show up for kids. And even I haven't been in the classroom for 10 years, but still can show up for kids as an educator when I go out and speak, or I'm writing books or do author readings. And I always like to say to all the teachers I meet is like, just be gentle on yourself as well.
Yeah, and we do have to be so gentle. And that's
Mhm.
the thing. I'm willing to give you the grace all day long. I can tell you
Mhm.
why our community is so lucky to have Laura in it. I can do all of that, but to do that for myself is incredibly hard. And I think that's where the work lies in this moment, is how do we honor that, like, you can do something you can do by virtue of the fact that you're you, that I could never do because I'm not you. Right. And that's the beauty of education, is that we can all show up in different ways, and all of it is enough, and all of it is a learning experience. Again, like, I don't need any more strategies. I've got them. What I need is the capacity to do that. And when I know that I can show up And, even the bestie teacher next door can say to me, Laurie, you know what, no matter your mood, your mindset, your mistakes, how you're showing up today makes you worthy to be here. And
Mhm.
it makes, those kids are so dang lucky to have you in their lives, showing up no matter how you show up. What, like, that's all I need. That's what I
Absolutely.
need.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you are a superhero. And you
As
are,
are you. Thank you. Thank you. And look at us
listen,
deflecting right away. Yeah. Okay. Let me
l-
just take it in.
look at that
Thank you.
redirect. Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to touch my heart and I'm going to say, thank you, Laura. I am really going to sit with your words. They are impactful and they mean a lot to me.
Yeah, you have created a massive ripple effect and you're not done yet. And I'm so, yeah, honored to be in your circle and to have been brave enough to reach out and say, let's chat, and for you to have been kind enough to say, I don't know who you are, Laura, but let's chat. And I And I think that is, I was so looking forward to this conversation. I think it brings so much outside of the class. It brings the realness of what happens inside of the classroom and the relevancy to how that is so important for real world.
And I think that's, the journey I'm on right now is I've done this to myself too. I peg myself as, just a kindergarten teacher.
Mm,
This is what we do, right? We tell ourselves we're just teachers. But when I sit here and get to have this conversation, the amount of times I've had goosebumps as you're
mm,
looking at me and you're affirming me, that makes me even more powerful going back in on Wednesday morning where we're back in school and I got to do it all again, right? Because ultimately, what we're doing here, what I want to do is create this community and create this beautiful place of connection, that safe place to land, to say, acknowledge things are really hard, just as
mm,
you and I have done in our own journeys as we sat on that meeting, that Zoom
mm,
call, and we said, wow, holy hell, we've had
mhm,
some really hard things happen. And we're not going to not talk about that. That's what's happened, but it's not who I choose to become. I have the choice in that now. So it's not about not acknowledging how hard this is. It's not about acknowledging how hard it is for our kids right now. It's about acknowledging right?
mhm.
What am I going to do with that? Where am I going to take this? And I am so thankful to you to allow me to come out here and not just think of myself as a kindergarten teacher. You're right. I,
Mm.
I do have a ripple effect and I need to sit in that and realize that this isn't just the children within our four walls. So for that, I really am grateful.
Oh, well, you know what? I have always said I taught grade 11 and 12 chemistry. And I have always said, I think
God bless you. Anyway,
and I feel the same thing about the K and one teachers. I feel like a kindergarten and a grade one teacher, those have to be the most sacred jobs, It's so pivotal in those children's lives. And so I'm feeling the same way about you. So I am again so grateful to be kind of part of your community and to feel connected and to have this conversation. And let's share with the listeners here, where can they find you? Where can they get more Laurie?
okay, so this is like the strangest part of my life is when I get to list off some of these things. So I do have a book called Teachers These Days with Dr. Jody Carrington. Like I still am like, what? Yeah. So you can find that on Amazon. I am at Mrs. Max Kinders on Instagram, Twitter. I'm still dabbling there and on Threads. I also, strangely enough, have a couple of side jobs where I am a speaker and I work for Outside Pin Consulting with Dr. Shelley Moore, but I can also be contacted through Talent Bureau. I often do speaking, not just for teachers and professional development, but for mental health advocacy and women's wellness as well. And lastly, the strangest thing to say out loud is you can catch me on CTV on Monday nights on a little show called The Traders Canada Season 2. Uh, don't know how it happened still, sitting in the surrealness of that whole thing. But yeah, I'm part of the cast this year. It shows on CTV on Monday nights at 8 o'clock Alberta time. And you can also stream it on Crave the following day. So I don't know. That just feels weird to say out loud, but that's where you can find me now.
So cool. And I'm going to link that all. And I am binge watching to catch up. I can't wait to see you on there. I feel like I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see.
It's going into episode 7 next week, and I'm still there. There's 10 episodes, so we'll
Well,
see what
listen,
happens. I am excited to find out my own fate.
your own fate. Well, I'm putting money on you, Miss Laurie. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for showing up here. And I'm sure this isn't going to be the last conversation we have. I wish we lived
Nope.
closer together. We could have coffee and, solve the
Oh,
world's
we're going to make that
problems.
happen, Laura. We are going to make that happen. Yes, we will make that happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This is a great, great episode for my listeners. So thank you so much for showing up here. And I can't wait to see what's ahead for you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you, Laura.